I'm Luna, 29 female. I live in a small, quiet apartment that has always felt more like a library than a home, surrounded by the comforting scent of old paper and leather. As an archivist, my life revolves around preserving the stories of others, meticulously piecing together fragments of the past. My own story, however, was one I felt was being slowly erased, a narrative in which I was becoming a footnote. The central conflict wasn't a dramatic, sudden event, but a quiet, creeping invisibility within my own family. A reality that was about to be thrown into sharp relief by a sterile, white-walled hospital room. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The silence in my small apartment had always been a source of comfort. It was a gentle quiet, the kind that allowed the soft rustle of turning pages and the distant hum of city life to become a soothing soundtrack. I worked from home, a job that suited my introverted nature perfectly. As an archivist for a historical society, I spent my days lost in other people's pasts, carefully cataloging letters, photographs, and diaries. It was meticulous work, requiring patience and a deep respect for the narratives that time had left behind. My own narrative, however, felt increasingly thin, as if written in disappearing ink. My family lived just a 30-minute drive away, but emotionally, the distance felt immense. There was my father, Richard, a man who measured life in spreadsheets and stock market trends. My mother, Diana, curated art galleries, and it seemed her children's lives with the same critical eye, valuing aesthetics and public perception above all else. And then there was Stella, my younger sister. Stella was the masterpiece of my mother's collection, the star of every family gathering. An aspiring actress, she had a natural effervescence that drew people in, a stark contrast to my quiet disposition. I was the sturdy, reliable frame. She was the vibrant, ever-changing portrait. The first whispers of my illness began subtly. It started with a persistent fatigue that seeped into my bones, a weariness that sleep couldn't fix. Then came the dizzy spells, sudden waves of vertigo that would leave me gripping my desk, waiting for the room to stop spinning. I dismissed it as stress, the product of long hours spent poring over fragile documents. But when a strange, tingling numbness began to creep up my legs, I could no longer ignore it. My doctor was a kind, methodical woman who listened patiently before ordering a battery of tests. The days that followed were a blur of sterile clinics and humming machines. I told my family I was undergoing some medical tests, but I kept the details vague. I didn't want to cause them undue worry over what could be nothing. Their reaction was predictably muted. My mother suggested I was probably just anemic and needed to eat more red meat. My father, ever the pragmatist, asked if my insurance would cover it. Stella was in the middle of a callback for a commercial and barely registered my words. The diagnosis, when it came, felt like a door slamming shut on the life I knew: multiple sclerosis. The words hung in the air of the small, sterile office, heavy and suffocating. It was a chronic, unpredictable disease of the central nervous system. The doctor explained the potential trajectory: relapses, remissions, a slow, creeping progression of disability. She spoke of treatments and therapies, but all I could hear was the static of my own fear. Driving home, the city lights blurred into long, indistinct streaks. I called my parents. My mother answered, her voice bright and a little rushed. "Luna, darling, is everything all right? I'm just on my way to a gallery opening." I took a deep breath. "Mom, I got the results. The doctor, she said it's multiple sclerosis." The line went quiet for a moment. I could hear the faint sound of traffic in her background. "Oh," she said finally. Her voice had lost its earlier warmth. "Well, that sounds serious. Are you sure? Did you get a second opinion?" "I just got the first one," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "It's a pretty definitive diagnosis: mom MRIs, spinal tap, the whole thing." "Right," she said. "Well, listen, darling, your father and I are about to head out. We can't be late for this. It's for a very important artist. Let's talk about this over the weekend, shall we? Try not to dwell on it. Stress is bad for these things, I'm sure." Before I could respond, she had ended the call. I sat in my car, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. I called my father's cell next. He picked up on the second ring. "Luna, is this important? I'm just finalizing some figures for a client." "Dad, I have a mess." He sighed, a sound of weary impatience I knew all too well. "Luna, we just spoke." "To your mother? Look, it's not ideal, obviously, but people live with these things. You're strong, just follow the doctor's orders. Now is not the time to be overly emotional. We'll discuss it on Sunday." Click. My hands were shaking so hard I had to place them on my lap. I tried Stella last. She answered with a squeal of excitement. "Oh my God, Lou, you'll never guess what. I got the call back for the national toothpaste commercial. Can you believe it? It's the one with the really cheesy jingle, but the pay is amazing." Tears were now streaming down my face, hot and silent. "Stella, that's great. Really." "Isn't it? I'm so excited. Anyway, what's up? Mom said you called earlier about some test results." "It's MS, Stella." Her excitement faltered for a second. "MS? Isn't that the thing with the wheelchairs?" "Sometimes," I whispered. "Wow, that's heavy. Look, I'm so sorry, Lou, but I've got to run. I have a celebratory dinner with my agent. Let's catch up next week, okay? Be positive." The line went dead. I was alone, utterly and completely alone, with this life-altering diagnosis. The family dinner that Sunday was a masterclass in avoidance. My diagnosis was allotted a 5-minute slot between my father's complaints about the stock market and my mother's critique of the restaurant's decor. They asked a few perfunctory questions about my treatment plan, nodding with distracted sympathy, their eyes already glazing over. Then, the conversation seamlessly shifted to Stella's commercial, and my MS was packed away, a disagreeable topic not fit for a pleasant family meal. I felt a profound and chilling sense of invisibility. It wasn't that they didn't care at all, it was that they didn't care enough. My illness was an inconvenience, a smudge on the perfect family portrait my mother tried so hard to maintain. It was a problem too complex for my father's balance sheets. And for Stella, it was a downer, a dark cloud obscuring her bright, shining sun. In the days that followed, I started my first round of treatment, a grueling course of steroids administered intravenously at the hospital. I would sit in a cold, clinical room for hours, a needle in my arm, watching the clear liquid drip, drip, drip into my veins. I did it all alone. No one from my family offered to come with me. They were all, as they said, terribly busy. A month after my diagnosis, just as the side effects of the steroids began to subside, leaving me with a fragile sense of normalcy, Stella called me in a panic. Her voice, usually so full of theatrical confidence, was thin and reedy. "Luna, I think I'm dying." I sat up, my heart lurching. "What? Stella, what's wrong? Where are you?" "I'm at home," she wailed. "My throat is so sore I can't even swallow, and I have a fever. I think it's 102. It has to be meningitis, or some rare tropical disease." I tried to calm her down, suggesting it was probably just the flu, which was going around. I offered to bring her some soup and medicine, but she insisted she needed to go to the emergency room immediately. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "Taking your sister to the ER. She is terribly ill. Please keep your phone on." The contrast was staggering. My chronic, lifelong neurological disease had warranted a brief, dismissive phone call. Stella's flu, which the doctors at the ER quickly diagnosed as a severe case of strep throat, was treated as a 5-alarm fire. My parents were by her side instantly. My mother called me from the hospital, her voice thick with worry. "The doctor said it's a very nasty bacterial infection. They're putting her on a strong course of antibiotics. Your poor sister is so weak, she can barely speak." They decided to admit her overnight for observation. What followed was a performance of familial devotion, so intense it was almost comical. My mother stayed at the hospital, sleeping in the uncomfortable visitor's chair by Stella's bed. My father canceled 2 important client meetings to bring Stella magazines and her favorite brand of ginger ale. They created a group chat titled Stella's Recovery and filled it with minute-by-minute updates. Stella's fever is down to 101.5. She managed to eat a little bit of Jell-O. The nurse is changing her IV. She was so brave. I watched the messages roll in, a hollow ache growing in my chest. When I had been in that same hospital, alone in the infusion center for hours on end, my phone had remained silent. I had sat there, watching a substance designed to alter my immune system drip into my body, and the only message I'd received was a reminder from my father that my car insurance payment was due. I visited Stella the next day. She was propped up against a mountain of pillows, looking pale and theatrical. My mother was fluffing her pillows while my father was peeling an orange for her, cutting it into neat, seedless segments. "Luna, darling, you came," my mother said. Barely looking up, "Just be quiet, your sister needs her rest." "How are you feeling, Stella?" I asked softly. She gave a weak moan. "Awful, my throat feels like it's full of glass. It's been a nightmare." "I'm sure," I said, my voice flatter than I intended. "They're taking good care of you, though. It looks like you have everything you need." My father shot me a sharp look. "Of course she does, we're here for her. That's what a family does." The irony of his statement was so thick I could have choked on it. I looked around the room. There were flowers from my parents' friends, a get-well-soon balloon tied to her bedpost, and a stack of glossy magazines. My stay in the hospital, my ongoing treatments, had been met with a collective shrug. Stella's temporary, treatable illness had mobilized the entire family. She was the golden child, and her throne was now a hospital bed where she could reign over her court of concerned subjects. I was the ghost in the machine, the invisible daughter. My illness was inconvenient because it was permanent. It was a long, messy, unpredictable road, not a short, dramatic crisis that could be wrapped up with a course of antibiotics and a few days of bed rest. Stella's illness was a story with a clear beginning, middle, and a swift, happy ending. My story was a sprawling, complicated novel that no one in my family had any interest in reading. A few days later, while Stella was still recovering at home, being weighted on hand and foot by our mother, I had a relapse. It came on suddenly. I woke up one morning and the vision in my right eye was blurry, as if I were looking through a frosted glass window. A quick call to my neurologist confirmed it was optic neuritis, a common MS symptom. He told me to come to the hospital for another round of high-dose steroids. This time, the feeling of loneliness was acute. As I sat in the infusion chair, the familiar cold drip began and I scrolled through my phone. The Stella's Recovery chat was still active, now filled with pictures of the recovery meals my mother was cooking for her. There was a photo of Stella, smiling weakly with a bowl of homemade chicken soup. The caption from my mother read, "My brave girl is on the mend, so proud of her." Tears welled in my eyes, hot and angry. I typed out a message to the group chat, my fingers trembling slightly. "I'm at the hospital. I've had a relapse. It's my vision this time, starting another round of steroids." I stared at the screen, waiting. 1 minute passed, then 5, then 10. Finally, a notification. It was from my father. "Sorry to hear that. Focus on getting better. Let us know if you need anything." Another message came through, this one from my mother. "Oh dear, that's not good. Make sure you rest up. Stella is finally starting to feel like herself again. We don't want to upset her with bad news." They didn't want to upset Stella. My relapse, my potential loss of vision, was bad news to be managed, something that might spoil the triumphant narrative of Stella's recovery. I was a secondary character in my own family, my health crisis a subplot to be minimized so it wouldn't overshadow the main storyline. The coldness of their response was more painful than any needle. It was a profound, soul-crushing invalidation. In that sterile, lonely room, I finally understood. I wasn't just invisible. To them, I was an inconvenience. My pain was a burden, and I was completely, utterly on my own. The days after the second round of steroids were a blur of exhaustion and blurred vision. The treatment left me feeling jittery and raw, my emotions hovering dangerously close to the surface. My apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage. The silence that I had once found so comforting now seemed to amplify my loneliness. I spent hours staring at the ceiling, replaying my family's dismissive messages in my mind. Each word was a small, sharp stone, and the weight of them was becoming unbearable. One afternoon, as I was sorting through a pile of mail that had accumulated on my coffee table, I came across a small, padded envelope. The return address was unfamiliar, but the handwriting was a faint echo from a distant past. It was from my Aunt Isabel. Isabel was my mother's older sister, the family's quiet eccentric. While my mother had pursued a life of social climbing and curated perfection, Isabel had chosen a different path. She had been a librarian, a lover of books and solitude. She had never married, had no children, and lived in a small cottage 2 hours away. We had been close when I was a child. She was the one who had encouraged my love of history, who had given me my first leather-bound journal. But as I grew older, my mother had systematically distanced our family from her. Isabel, with her simple life and her lack of interest in material wealth, was an embarrassment to Diana's carefully constructed world. We hadn't seen her in years. Curiosity piqued, I tore open the envelope. Inside, nestled in a piece of bubble wrap, was a small, ornate silver key. It was old, with a delicate, filigreed head. There was also a folded piece of paper. I unfolded it, my hands still clumsy from the lingering numbness of my relapse. It was a letter written in Isabel's familiar, elegant script. My dearest Luna, I know we haven't spoken in a long time, and for that, I am truly sorry. I have tried to reach out over the years, but your mother has always been a formidable gatekeeper. But I have kept my eye on you from a distance. I was so sorry to hear about your diagnosis. I know better than anyone what it feels like to be overlooked in that family. Years ago, when you were just a girl, I came into a small inheritance. I wanted to do something meaningful with it, something that would last. I bought a small flat in the city, in a quiet, historic neighborhood I thought you would love. I put it in a trust for you, with the intention of giving it to you when you turned 30. But it seems to me that you might need it sooner. This key opens the door to that flat. It is yours, Luna, fully paid for. The taxes and utilities are handled by the trust for the next 5 years. It is a place for you to be safe, to be quiet, to heal. A place where you can be the main character in your own story. There are no strings attached. You don't have to see me or even speak to me, though I would like that very much. Just know that someone in this world sees you, someone values you, and someone loves you. With all my heart, Aunt Isabel. Beneath her signature was an address, one I recognized as being in the city's most beautiful and historic district, a place I had often wandered through, admiring the old brownstones and tree-lined streets. I sat there, stunned, the letter and the key clutched in my hand. Tears began to fall, but they were not the hot, angry tears of the past few weeks. They were tears of shock, of relief, of a profound and overwhelming sense of being seen. After weeks of feeling like a ghost, a phantom in my own life, this letter was a validation so powerful it felt like an anchor in a stormy sea. My estranged aunt, the woman my mother had dismissed as irrelevant, had seen me. She had understood my quiet nature, my love for history, my need for a safe harbor. She had made a plan for my future, a gesture of love and foresight that was so out of sync with the casual neglect of my immediate family that it felt like it belonged to a different reality. For the rest of the day, I couldn't stop thinking about the key. It felt heavy in my palm, a tangible symbol of a different life. The idea of a new home, a place that was truly mine, a gift given with no expectations, began to take root in my mind. It was a seed of hope in the barren landscape of my despair. That evening, I called my mother. I didn't mention the letter or the key. I just wanted to see if anything had changed, if my absence had registered at all. "Luna, I was just thinking about you," she said, her voice a little too bright. "How are you feeling? Is the vision any better?" "It's about the same," I said, "still blurry." "Oh, well, these things take time, I suppose," she said dismissively. "Listen, the reason I was thinking of you is that Stella has an audition next week for a small part in a play, and the theater is quite near your apartment. We were thinking of coming into the city, maybe taking her out for a good luck dinner. We might be a bit late, so we were wondering if we could crash at your place. It would save us a drive home." I was speechless. They wanted to use my apartment as a free hotel for Stella's convenience. There was no offer to help me, no concern for my health, just an assumption that my home, my space, was at their disposal. "Mom," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "I was in the hospital for 5 hours today, alone. I can barely see out of one eye, and you want to know if you can use my apartment as a base for Stella's audition." There was a huffy sigh on the other end of the line. "Well, there's no need to be so dramatic, Luna. It was just a thought. Obviously, if you're not feeling up to it, we'll make other arrangements. You're always so sensitive." "Goodbye, Mom," I said, and I hung up the phone. I looked down at the silver key in my hand. It was more than just a key to a flat. It was a key to a different future. A future where I was not an afterthought, a footnote, or a convenience. A future where I could close a door on the people who refused to see my worth and open a new one, a door that led to a place where I was valued. The plan that began to form in my mind was not one of revenge, not yet. It was a plan for survival. It was a plan to choose myself, finally, and to walk through the door that my forgotten aunt had so lovingly opened for me. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The blurriness in my eye was still there, a constant frustrating reminder of my illness, but the fog in my mind had lifted. I held the silver key in my hand, its cool weight a grounding presence. Today, I was going to see my new home. The address Aunt Isabel had provided was in a part of the city I adored, a quiet neighborhood known for its historic architecture and cobblestone streets. It was a world away from the bland, modern apartment complex I currently lived in. I took a cab, not trusting my blurred vision to drive, and as we turned onto the final street, my breath caught in my throat. The building was a handsome, 4-story brownstone with ornate carvings above the windows and a heavy, darkwood door. It was elegant and timeless, a place that seemed to hold 1,000 stories within its walls. My flat was on the 3rd floor. I climbed the winding, carpeted staircase, my heart pounding with a mixture of nervousness and excitement. I stood before the door, my hand trembling as I inserted the silver key into the lock. It turned with a satisfying, solid click. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was the light. 2 tall, beautiful windows dominated the far wall, flooding the space with the soft morning sun. The flat was small but perfectly laid out. There was a cozy living area with a fireplace and built-in bookshelves, a small but functional kitchen, a bedroom just big enough for a double bed, and a bathroom with a charming, clawfoot tub. But it wasn't empty. Aunt Isabel, in her quiet, thoughtful way, had furnished it. The furniture was simple but elegant, a comfortable-looking armchair, a small dining table, a sturdy wooden bed frame. The bookshelves were already stocked with classics. In the kitchen, there was a new kettle and a teapot, with a box of my favorite Earl Grey tea sitting beside them. It was a home, not just a space, but a home, curated with love and an intimate understanding of who I was. On the small dining table, there was another note from Isabel. "Luna, I hope you like it. I tried to imagine what you would need to feel comfortable. There is food in the fridge and the cupboards. Please make this place your own. Yours, Isabel." I opened the fridge. It was stocked with milk, eggs, cheese, and fresh vegetables. The cupboards held pasta, rice, and canned goods. She had thought of everything. She had given me more than just a flat. She had given me a soft place to land. I spent the rest of the day exploring my new home. I ran my hands over the spines of the books on the shelves, many of which were my childhood favorites. I opened the windows and let the fresh air circulate, listening to the quiet sounds of the neighborhood. For the first time since my diagnosis, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. This was a place where I could heal. This was a place where I could start again. That evening, I made a decision. I was going to move, not just my belongings, but my entire life. I would leave my old apartment, with its sterile silence and its proximity to a family who didn't value me, and I would build a new life here, in this beautiful, light-filled space that was a gift of pure, unconditional love. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. I felt a surge of energy, a stark contrast to the crushing fatigue I had been battling. I called a moving company and booked them for the end of the week. I started packing up my old apartment, sorting through my belongings, deciding what was essential and what I could leave behind. The process was cathartic. I wasn't just packing boxes, I was shedding the skin of my old life. I didn't tell my family. There was no point. They would either not care or they would make it about them, how my moving would inconvenience them, how I was being rash and emotional. I didn't need their permission or their approval. This was my decision, my new beginning. On the day of the move, I supervised the movers as they loaded my life into a truck. It was a strange feeling, watching my familiar surroundings be dismantled and packed away. But there was no sadness, only a sense of forward motion. Once the truck was loaded and on its way to my new address, I took one last look around the empty apartment. It looked small and sad without my things. It was just a box, a container for a life that no longer fit me. I left my old keys on the counter and closed the door behind me without a backward glance. Arriving at the brownstone felt like a true homecoming. The movers were efficient, and within a few hours, my boxes were stacked in my new living room. I paid them, and then I was alone, surrounded by the sealed-up pieces of my past in a space that represented my future. I didn't start unpacking right away. Instead, I made myself a cup of Earl Grey tea in the new kettle and sat in the armchair by the window, watching the sun set over the city. The light turned the room golden, and I felt a sense of contentment so deep it was almost overwhelming. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my Aunt Isabel. She picked up on the second ring. "Hello," her voice was soft, hesitant. "Aunt Isabel," I said, my own voice thick with emotion. "It's Luna." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Luna, oh my dear girl, did you get it? Did you find the flat?" "I'm here now," I said, tears welling in my eyes. "Isabel, I don't have the words. Thank you for everything." "Oh, Luna," she said, and I could hear the tears in her voice now too. "You don't have to thank me. I just wanted you to have a safe place. A place to be you." We talked for over an hour. I told her about my diagnosis, about my family's reaction, about the loneliness and the feeling of being invisible. She listened patiently, making soft sounds of sympathy and understanding. She told me about her life, her garden, the books she was reading. It was easy, comfortable. It was a conversation between two people who understood each other on a fundamental level. Before we hung up, I asked her, "Why, Isabel? Why did you do all this for me?" Her answer was simple, and it hit me with the force of a revelation. "Because," she said softly, "I saw that you were the one who was holding the family together, the quiet pillar that everyone leaned on but no one ever bothered to check on. I knew that one day you would need a place to rest. I just didn't know it would be so soon." After the call, I sat in the gathering dusk, her words echoing in my mind. She was right. I had always been the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who never made a fuss. And because I never asked for anything, I was given nothing. My phone buzzed. It was a message from my mother in the Stella's Recovery group chat. "Does anyone know why Luna's phone has been going straight to voicemail? I've been trying to call her all day to confirm about us staying over for Stella's audition." I looked at the message, and for the first time, I didn't feel a pang of hurt or a surge of anger. I felt nothing but a quiet, calm detachment. They were a part of the life I was leaving behind. They just didn't know it yet. I turned my phone off and started unpacking my books, ready to fill the empty shelves of my new life. The first week in my new home was a revelation. I woke up each morning to the sun streaming through my windows, the quiet hum of the city a gentle backdrop to my days. My vision slowly began to improve, the blurriness receding, and with it, my energy returned. I unpacked my boxes, arranging my books on Isabel's shelves, hanging my clothes in the closet, and slowly, piece by piece, making the space my own. I established a new routine. I found a small park nearby where I would walk each morning. I discovered a local bakery with the best croissants I had ever tasted. I spent my afternoons working, my archival projects a comforting, structured part of my day. For the first time in my life, I was living entirely on my own terms, and it was intoxicating. My only contact with the outside world was with my Aunt Isabel. We spoke on the phone every few days, our conversations easy and warm. She told me stories about my mother when they were girls, painting a picture of a woman I had never known, one who was not always so concerned with appearances. It was healing, in a way, to understand the roots of my family's dysfunction. I kept my phone off most of the time. When I did turn it on, it was flooded with messages and missed calls from my family. They had moved from confusion to irritation, and now to a full-blown panic. A message from Stella: "Luna, where are you? Mom is freaking out, you need to call her. My audition is tomorrow and we have nowhere to stay." A message from my father: "Luna, this is irresponsible. Your mother is worried sick. Whatever game you are playing, it's time to stop. Call us immediately." And a dozen messages from my mother, each one more frantic than the last. "Luna, please answer. I'm sorry if I upset you. We just need to know you're okay. We were counting on staying with you. All the hotels are booked because of some convention." The walls were closing in, but they were closing in on them, not on me. Their carefully managed world had been disrupted, not by my illness, but by my absence. My role in the family, the one I had never even realized I was playing, the reliable, invisible, always available daughter, was now vacant, and they were scrambling to fill the void. The day of Stella's audition arrived. My phone rang incessantly. I ignored it. I went for my morning walk, bought a croissant, and settled in to work. Around noon, there was a frantic buzzing from the intercom in my new building. I ignored that too. Then, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Luna, it's me, your neighbor from your old apartment building. Your family is here. They've been knocking on your door for an hour. They seem to think you're inside. They're causing quite a SC." So they had driven to my old apartment, assuming I was just ignoring them. The image of my mother, father, and sister standing in the hallway of my old building, their frustration mounting, brought a grim smile to my face. A few hours later, I received an email from my father. The subject line was "Urgent Family Matter." "Luna, we have been to your apartment. The building manager let us in after we told him it was a family emergency. The apartment is empty. All of your furniture is gone. We have been calling you for days. This is completely unacceptable. You have caused your mother a great deal of distress. We have filed a missing persons report. The police will be contacting you. I expect you to call me the second you receive this message. We are your family. You do not get to just disappear." Richard. A missing persons report. The absurdity of it was almost laughable. They hadn't noticed I was missing from my own life for months, but the second my physical absence became an inconvenience to them, it was a police matter. They weren't worried about me, they were worried about their loss of control. I knew I had to respond. I couldn't have the police involved. I drafted a simple email and sent it to my father, copying my mother and Stella. Subject: Ray, urgent family matter. I am not missing, I am safe and well, I have moved. As you know, I am dealing with a serious, chronic illness. I have made the decision to prioritize my health and well-being, which has necessitated a change in my living situation. My new address is private. I will contact you when I am ready. Luna. The response was immediate. My phone exploded with a fresh barrage of texts and calls. They were furious. From my father: "What do you mean your address is private? We are your parents. You can't just move and not tell us where you are. This is childish and disrespectful. Call me now." From my mother: "Luna, how could you do this to me? After everything I've done for you, I am your mother, I am sick with worry, you are being selfish. You have ruined Stella's big day." From Stella: Seriously, Luna, you moved and didn't tell anyone. Because of you, we had to drive all the way back home last night. I was exhausted for my audition today. You're always so dramatic. Their words, which once would have pierced me to the core, now felt like pebbles thrown against a fortress wall. Their concern was entirely self-serving. My mother's worry was about her own feelings, not my safety. My father's respect was about his authority, not our relationship. And Stella's drama was a projection of her own self-absorption. The fortress they were trying to breach was not just the walls of my new flat, but the boundaries I was finally, belatedly, building around my own life. They were used to a Luna with no walls, no doors, no locks. They had always been able to walk in and out of my life as they pleased, taking what they needed and leaving what they didn't. But that Luna was gone. In her place was a woman who was learning the value of a locked door and the peace that came with it. I turned my phone off again. I made myself dinner and ate it by the window, watching the city lights begin to twinkle. The panic and anger in their messages felt very far away. They were trapped in the world they had created, a world that revolved around appearances, convenience, and the worship of the golden child. I, on the other hand, was free. The walls were not closing in on me. For the first time, I had a room of my own, and it was a room with a view. A week of silence followed my email. I knew it was the calm before the storm. They were regrouping, trying to figure out a new line of attack. I used the time to settle further into my new life. I found a local yoga studio that offered classes for people with mobility issues. I reconnected with a few old friends from university, people I had lost touch with amidst the fog of my family obligations. I was slowly, carefully, building a new support system, one based on mutual respect and genuine affection. The storm broke on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. I received an email from Aunt Isabel. Subject, a visitor. Dearest Luna, your mother is here, at my house. She somehow found my address and just showed up at my door. She is very upset. She says she needs to speak with you, that it's a matter of life and death. I have not told her where you are. I never will unless you ask me to, but I thought you should know. All my love. Isabel. My blood ran cold. My mother, driving 2 hours to the home of a sister she hadn't spoken to in years, was a move of pure desperation. She had bypassed my father's anger and Stella's narcissism and had gone straight for what she perceived as the weakest link, my kindly, reclusive aunt. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Luna, it was my mother's voice, strained and high-pitched. Thank God, Isabel let me use her phone. Luna, you have to come home. I am home, Mom, I said, my voice calm and steady. No, I mean, you have to come back to us, she said, her voice cracking. Your father, he's not well. I felt a familiar, sickening lurch in my stomach. What's wrong with him? His heart, she said, her voice dropping to a dramatic whisper. The stress of all this, of you disappearing, it's been too much for him. He had a scare yesterday, chest pains. The doctor said he needs to avoid all stress. He's asking for you, Luna. He needs you. It was the perfect gambit. The one thing she knew I couldn't ignore, my father's health. For a moment, I wavered. Guilt, old and deeply ingrained, washed over me. Had I caused this? Was my bid for freedom going to cost my father his life? But then, Isabel's words came back to me. The quiet pillar that everyone leaned on but no one ever bothered to check on. This was just another form of leaning, another way of shifting the weight of their lives onto my shoulders. Is he in the hospital? I asked. Well, no, she admitted. The doctor said he could rest at home, but he needs to be monitored. He needs his family around him. And Stella is there. Of course she is, my mother said indignantly. But she's very emotional. She's not good in a crisis. You've always been the strong one, the practical one. We need you, Luna. There it was, my role, so clearly defined. I was the strong one, the practical one, the one who was good in a crisis. My own crisis, my own illness, didn't count. My strength was only valuable when it could be used to serve them. I see, I said. Well, I'm glad he's at home and that Stella is with him. I'm sure you'll all take very good care of him." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. "What? Luna, did you hear me? Your father is ill. He's asking for you." "I heard you, Mom," I said, and my voice was colder than I had ever heard it be. "When I was diagnosed with a degenerative neurological disease, you told me not to dwell on it and went to a gallery opening. When I had a relapse that affected my vision, you told me not to upset Stella. You have shown me, time and time again, that my health and my well-being are, at best, an inconvenience to you. I am simply returning the favor." "How dare you?" she gasped, her voice trembling with rage. "This is not the same thing at all. We are your family." "A family that only functions when I am in my designated role," I retorted. "The invisible support beam. The unpaid, unacknowledged caregiver. The one who is expected to absorb everyone else's stress, but never to have any of her own. Well, I quit. My resignation is effective immediately." I could hear her sputtering, speechless with fury. "Tell Dad I hope he feels better," I said, and then I did something I had never done before. I hung up on my mother. A few minutes later, my phone rang again. It was Isabel. "She's gone," she said, her voice full of relief. She left in quite a huff. "Luna, are you all right? That must have been incredibly difficult." "It was," I admitted, my hand still shaking. "But it was also necessary. Thank you, Isabel, for everything, for being my wall." "Oh, my dear," she said warmly, "that's what family is for." That evening, the final plea arrived. It was an email, not from my mother or father, but from Stella. The tone was completely different from her usual self-absorbed whining. It was cajoling, almost sweet. Subject: I miss you. Hi, Luna. Mom told me what happened. I know we haven't been the best family to you lately. We were scared, I think. Your diagnosis, it's a lot to handle. And we didn't do it right. I'm sorry. Dad is really not doing well. He keeps asking for you. He won't say much, but he just sits in his chair and looks out the window. Mom is a wreck. I'm trying my best, but you know how I am. I'm not the strong one. You are. We miss you. I miss you. Please, can you just tell us where you are? We can work this out. We can be a family again. Love. Stella. It was a masterstroke of manipulation. It was the carrot after the stick, the soft plea after the angry demand. It was designed to appeal to my sense of responsibility, my love for my sister, my desire, buried deep beneath the hurt, for my family to be whole. But I saw it for what it was. It was a lure, a trap. They weren't promising to change. They were promising to let me come back and resume my old role. They needed their pillar back. The entire structure was starting to collapse without it. I thought about my new life, my sunny apartment, my quiet mornings, my yoga classes, my conversations with Isabel, the sense of peace and self-worth that I was so painstakingly building. I typed my reply, my fingers steady and sure. Stella, I'm glad to hear that you are all starting to realize the consequences of your actions, but an apology is not a change in behavior. You don't miss me. You miss the role I played in your lives. You miss having someone to absorb your anxieties, manage your crises, and make your lives easier, all while asking for nothing in return. I am building a new life for myself now, one where my health and my happiness are the priority. I am not the strong one anymore. I am just me, and I am learning that that is enough. I hope Dad feels better, and I hope that you all learn to stand on your own 2 feet, because I will not be coming back to hold you up. Luna. I hit send, and then I blocked their numbers. I blocked their email addresses. I created a digital wall to match the emotional one I had so carefully constructed. The final plea had been made, and the final answer had been given. The door was closed, and for the first time in my life, I had locked it from the inside. Months passed. The autumn leaves in the park turned from green to gold to a deep, burnished red. My life settled into a rhythm that was both peaceful and fulfilling. The blurriness in my eye completely disappeared, and a new treatment regimen was keeping my MS symptoms at bay. I felt healthier, stronger, and more clear-headed than I had in years. My friendship with Aunt Isabel blossomed. She came to visit me in my new flat, her eyes shining with pride as she saw how I had made it my own. We spent the day together, walking through the historic streets, visiting a small museum, and drinking tea in my sun-filled living room. It felt like finding a piece of my heart that I never knew was missing. She was the family I had always craved, unconditional, accepting, and kind. I never heard from my parents or Stella directly again. My digital walls held firm. But occasionally, news would trickle through. Isabel still had some distant contact with a family cousin who would pass on snippets of information. Richard, my father, had apparently not had a serious heart condition after all. The chest pains had been a severe anxiety attack, brought on, the cousin said, by a combination of a downturn in the stock market and the unprecedented stress of my departure. He had recovered physically, but he had become withdrawn and sullen. His quiet, reliable daughter, the one who had always listened patiently to his financial monologues, was gone, and he was left with a wife and another daughter who had no interest in his world. Diana, my mother, had not taken my absence well. Her perfect family portrait was shattered. Without me to act as a buffer and a mediator, the cracks in her relationships with her husband and her golden child were beginning to show. She and Stella, once co-conspirators in their self-absorption, were now apparently at odds. Stella's acting career had stalled, the toothpaste commercial had not, in fact, been her big break, and she had moved back home. Without me as a common, invisible enemy to unite them, their own narcissistic traits began to clash. The quiet disapproval Diana had once reserved for me was now, I was told, frequently directed at Stella. The most poignant piece of news came about 6 months after I had left. The cousin mentioned that Stella had been diagnosed with a fairly severe autoimmune disorder herself, one that caused chronic pain and fatigue. The irony was not lost on me. In a strange twist of fate, she was now facing her own long, uncertain health battle. But the response from her parents was, I heard, quite different from the one I had received. Diana was now the picture of a devoted, worried mother, ferrying Stella to appointments, researching alternative therapies, and filling her social media with posts about her brave warrior daughter. It seemed my departure had, in its own way, been a terrifying wake-up call for them. Faced with the reality of a truly sick child who would not be ignored, they had been forced to step up. They were now giving Stella the care and attention they had so cruelly denied me. A part of me felt a flicker of something dark and satisfied at this news. But mostly, I just felt a profound sense of pity. Pity for Stella, who was now trapped in the gilded cage of their overbearing concern, and pity for my parents, who had needed to lose one daughter to finally learn how to care for another. One day, a package arrived for me. It had been forwarded from my old address. It was a small, heavy box. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a beautiful, leather-bound photo album. The first page had a single sentence, written in my father's neat, precise handwriting. "The stories you saved." I opened the album. It was filled with photographs from my childhood, ones I hadn't seen in years. Me as a baby, me on my first day of school, me and Isabel in her garden. But they weren't the usual family snapshots. They were the quiet moments, the in-between moments. Me reading a book in a corner while everyone else posed for a group photo. Me holding Stella's hand when she fell off her bike. Me, in the background, watching, observing, holding things together. It was a silent admission, the only one my emotionally constipated father W. As capable of making, he had seen me. He had always seen me. He just hadn't known how to value me until I was gone. The album was both a peace offering and a confession. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Acknowledging my role after I had vacated, it was not enough to earn me back. The silence of the present was more valuable to me than the echoes of the past. My life now is quiet, but it is not empty. It is filled with good books, long walks, meaningful work, and the warm, steady love of my aunt. I still have MS. I still have days of fatigue and pain, but I am no longer invisible. I am the main character in my own story, and it is a story I am finally proud to write. My family may have come begging, but but I had found something far more valuable than their conditional, self-serving love. I had found myself. And I was never letting her go again.